I was born in Georgia in a small town just outside Savannah. For most of my 68 years, I believed in family above everything. My late husband, Robert, used to say this old house was more than wood and bricks. "It's the heart of us, Mary," he'd whisper on cold nights, fire crackling in the hearth. When Robert passed away, this Victorian home became my world. High ceilings, stained glass windows, a porch swing that creaked in summer. Every corner held his memory. Every step carried our story. I raised my son Daniel here, just the two of us after Robert died. He was my pride, my comfort, the reason I kept going. When he brought home his new wife, Claire, I opened my arms without hesitation. I told myself she's the daughter I never had. Claire smiled sweetly, her hands soft when they hugged me. I wanted to believe that we were starting a new chapter. Family dinners on Sundays, pumpkin pies at Thanksgiving Christmas lights, twinkling across the porch. I pictured grandchildren running through the hallway, their laughter filling the empty rooms. The house felt alive again. Neighbors would stop by with pies or gossip, and I'd proudly say, "My son and his wife live with me now." To them, we must have looked like the perfect picture. Daniel with his steady job in finance. Claire always dressed just right, the kind of woman who knew how to impress at church. And me, the aging mother, happy to still be needed. But deep down, I was clinging to a dream. The dream that my family was unshakable. The dream that blood meant loyalty. Every night I thanked God for giving me peace again. I'd sit by the window with my tea, watching the oak trees sway in the breeze, thinking this is what Robert wanted his wife and his son, safe under one roof. I ignored the small silences, the quick glances between Daniel and Claire. I ignored the way conversations always circled back to money, because love I thought was stronger than suspicion, and I was so ready to believe in that love. Every morning I cooked breakfast biscuits and gravy, the kind Robert loved. Daniel would grab coffee rush off to work. Claire would linger smiling as she asked about the property taxes, the insurance policies, little things she claimed she was curious about. I brushed it off, telling myself she cared. When she offered to help organize the family paperwork, I felt grateful. After all, my hands had grown shaky with age. My memory wasn't what it used to be. I thought, why not let her help? That was my mistake. At church, people admired how close we seemed. "Mary, you're so blessed," they'd tell me. "A son who takes care of you, a daughter-in-law who loves you." I nodded, smiling through the glow of their praise. Inside my chest warmed with pride. But pride can blind you. It blinded me to the shadows that were already creeping in. The truth, I was lonely. Since Robert died, I spent too many evenings listening to the clock tick in a house too big for one. So when Daniel called me Mom with that boyish grin, I melted. When Claire hugged me tight, whispering, "We're family," I believed her. I wanted to believe, because the alternative, that they didn't love me, was too painful to face. That summer, the house brimmed with activity. Claire redecorated the guest room, talked about future plans. Daniel promised to handle the bills, said it was easier that way. I handed him my checkbook. I thought nothing of it. After all, he was my son, my only child. If you can't trust your own child, who can you trust? At least that's what I told myself. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. But at that time, I only saw what I wanted to see. A family, whole again, safe again, loved again. And so I welcomed them deeper into my life, into my home, into my heart. Not knowing that every smile carried a secret. Not knowing that trust could be turned into a weapon. Not knowing that soon this house of love would become a battlefield. Family can look perfect on the outside, but secrets often hide behind the smiles. The truth always finds a way to surface. Subscribe now and stay with me for what happens next. It started small, so small you might miss it. One evening after dinner, I walked into the living room. Claire was on the phone, her voice hushed, almost urgent. The moment she saw me, she ended the call too quickly. "Just my sister," she said, smiling. But her eyes darted away. I wanted to believe her, I really did. The next morning, I woke early for coffee. The house was quiet, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. But in the hallway, I noticed Daniel's office door slightly open. Inside, Claire was rifling through drawers. She froze when she saw me. Looking for stamps, she laughed, holding a folder halfway closed. I smiled politely, but something in my chest tightened. Why would she be looking in Daniel's office for something as simple as stamps? That week, I overheard whispers when I entered a room. Conversations cut short, paperwork shoved into drawers. My name mentioned, then silence. At first, I brushed it off. They were young, maybe dealing with stress I didn't understand. But the unease grew like a stone in my shoe that I couldn't shake loose. One Saturday, I found Claire in the study. She had spread out papers across the desk. My papers. Property tax receipts, insurance policies, bank statements with my name on them. "Claire, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She smiled sweetly. "Just organizing things for you, Mary. We want to help make life easier." Her words were sugar, but her hands trembled slightly as she slid the documents back together. Later that night, Daniel brought up the same topic. "Mom, maybe it's time you let us handle the house finances. It's a lot for you at your age." I sat there, my fork heavy in my hand. At my age, I'd managed this household for decades. Robert and I built this life together, paid every bill, kept every record. Still, I forced a smile. Maybe I'll think about it. Inside, though, I felt the sting of doubt. Was my son really suggesting I couldn't manage my own affairs? The following week, Claire suggested I rest more. "You shouldn't strain yourself, Mary," she said, guiding me to the couch. "You've been forgetting things lately." Forgetting things. Her words hit me like a slap. I'd misplaced my keys once left the oven on one afternoon. But who doesn't at 68? She said it kindly, but I could feel the sharp edge beneath, like she was planting a seed for Daniel to notice. Soon enough, Daniel began repeating the same concerns. "Mom, you left the porch light on all night. That's not like you. Mom, you double paid the water bill. Maybe you're tired." Each comment chipped away at my confidence. I wondered if they were right. Was I slipping? Or were they just watching too closely, waiting for mistakes to prove their point? One evening, I walked into the kitchen quietly. Daniel and Claire stood close together, voices low. "She trusts us," Claire whispered. "Just a little longer." My stomach dropped. The room spun for a moment. But then Daniel spotted me. He smiled, his voice too bright. "Mom, we were just talking about painting the house next spring." I nodded, pretending I believed him. But the pit in my stomach grew heavier that night. At church, neighbors kept praising Daniel and Claire. "Such a devoted couple," they said. "Taking such good care of you, Mary." I smiled, but my hands trembled as I clutched the hymnal. If only they knew. If only they saw what I saw behind closed doors. The worst came one rainy night. I couldn't sleep, so I padded down the hall for water. Daniel and Claire's voices carried from behind their closed bedroom door. "He's almost convinced," Claire said. "Another month, maybe 2. Then we'll have everything signed." Everything signed. Her words echoed in my ears. I leaned against the wall, my knees weak. Were they talking about me? My property? My life? I wanted to barge in, demand answers. But instead, I crept back to my room, heart pounding like thunder outside. From that night on, I could no longer ignore it. The picture-perfect family was cracking at the seams. The smiles at dinner felt rehearsed, the hugs felt hollow, and every time Claire touched my arm, I wondered if her kindness was just another mask. Still, I clung to hope. I told myself Daniel would never betray me. I raised him. I sacrificed for him. Surely blood was stronger than greed. But in the quiet of night, doubt crept in like a draft through an old window, and I began to fear that I was wrong. Terribly, heartbreakingly wrong. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how betrayals rarely announce themselves. The morning began quietly. Rain tapped against the porch roof. I brewed coffee, the smell filling the kitchen just like it had for decades. Daniel walked in suit-pressed tie, neat, his face unreadable. Claire followed, holding a stack of papers. Too many papers for household chores. "Mom, we need to talk," Daniel said, pulling out a chair. My stomach clenched. The tone in his voice wasn't casual. Claire slid the papers toward me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "These are just routine documents," she said softly. "Healthcare forms, things you should sign just in case of an emergency." I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. "Why the rush?" I asked. Daniel leaned closer. "Mom, it's for your own good. You don't want complications later." The words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a play they'd practiced together. I stared at the top page. Words blurred through my glasses. Durable power of attorney, transfer of deed, my house. Cold spread through me. "This isn't health care," I whispered. Claire's smile stiffened. "Mary, you've been stressed. You need rest. Let us take care of things." Daniel's jaw tightened. Mom stopped being difficult. The pen felt heavy in my hand. For a heartbeat, I thought about refusing. But Daniel's eyes were sharp, harder than I'd ever seen. This was no request, it was an order. I swallowed. The room spun around me. Robert's portrait hung on the wall, his eyes kind, steady. I wanted to scream at him, ask why he'd left me to face this alone. But instead, I lowered my pen to the page. My signature scratched across the line. A piece of my soul went with it. The next days blurred. Claire moved quickly, filing papers at the courthouse downtown. Daniel stopped asking my opinion. He spoke to me like I was a guest in my own home. One evening, I came back from grocery shopping. The locks had been changed. My key no longer fit. I banged on the door, rain soaking my coat. Claire opened it, arms crossed, face cold. "This isn't your house anymore, Mary," she said flatly. Daniel stood behind her, silent, avoiding my eyes. "Go stay somewhere else. We'll handle things from here." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All those years of love, of sacrifice, erased with a turn of the lock. I stumbled back to my car, groceries still in the trunk. Water dripped from my hair, tears mixing with the rain. The old Victorian house glowed warm from inside, but I was left in the dark. That night, I checked into a cheap motel off Route 17. The room smelled of bleach and loneliness. I sat on the stiff bedspread, staring at the peeling wallpaper, wondering how my life had unraveled so fast. Daniel didn't call, not once. Claire texted only once. "Please don't make this harder. It's for the best." For the best, for who? I'd given them everything. And in return, they'd strip me bare. Days later, I tried to return to the house. The neighbors looked away, embarrassed, as if my shame might rub off on them. When I knocked, Daniel answered this time. "Mom, please stop. You're not well." Not well, the words cut deeper than knives. "You signed the papers," he said quietly. "Just let it go." I stared at him, my only son, and wondered if I ever truly knew him at all. I drove back to the motel, my hands shaking on the wheel. The highway stretched endlessly, Spanish moss hanging from oak trees, the Georgia air thick and heavy. Every mile, my heart cracked further. I wasn't just losing my house, I was losing my family. And somewhere deep down, I feared I was losing myself too. That night, I whispered into the dark. "Robert, if you can hear me, I need your strength. I can't do this alone." But the room stayed silent. Only the hum of the old air conditioner answered me back. For the first time in my life, I felt truly abandoned. The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was open, raw, undeniable. They had taken my trust, my name, my home. And they weren't finished yet. Because once you sign away everything, the wolves don't stop at the door. They step inside and they keep taking. The motel room became my world. One narrow bed, one buzzing air conditioner, one flickering light above the sink. I'd never felt so small. The wallpaper peeled in long strips. The carpet smelled like damp cigarettes, the kind of place people stayed when they had nowhere else. And now that was me. Every morning I sat with weak motel coffee and stared at the phone. Daniel's number lit my screen. Not because he called, but because I called him. Voicemail, every time. "Son, it's me," I'd whisper, my voice shaking. "Please call back, please." But the phone stayed silent. Claire didn't call either. Her last text still burned in my mind. "It's better this way. Please don't come back." Better for who? For them sitting in my kitchen, using my dishes, living in my house. For me, it was loneliness sharp enough to cut bone. I drove past the old Victorian once. Just once. The porch light glowed warm, curtains drawn tight, smoke rising from the chimney on a cool October night. But the lock on the front door was no longer mine. I parked across the street, watching from behind the wheel, my hands gripping so hard my knuckles went white. Through the window, I saw Daniel, laughing, a glass of wine in his hand. Claire leaned close, her head on his shoulder. They looked like the perfect couple. And me, I was just a shadow sitting in a beat-up Chevy in the dark. The neighbors saw me. I know they did. Mrs. Henderson waved once awkwardly before turning away. People whispered at the church. Their eyes slid over me like I'd become invisible. "Poor Mary," I heard one woman say. "She's not herself anymore." I heard Daniel had to step in. Step in. He hadn't stepped in. He had stepped over me. The hardest part wasn't losing the house. It was losing Daniel. My boy. The child who used to bring me flowers picked from the yard. The boy who cried when his daddy died. Now he wouldn't even look at me. That silence hurt worse than any slammed door. The motel clerk started to recognize me. She didn't ask questions, but her eyes said enough. Another old woman down on her luck, too proud to admit it. I stopped going to the grocery store. Too many stares. Too many neighbors who once smiled now looked through me. So I bought cheap TV dinners from the gas station next to the motel. They tasted like cardboard, but I didn't care anymore. Food didn't fill the emptiness. One night, the loneliness broke me. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, my Bible open in my lap. Tears blurred the words. I whispered Robert's name like a prayer. Why did you leave me with this? Why did you leave me alone? The air conditioner rattled, but no answer came. Only silence. The kind of silence that crawls under your skin and stays there. I thought about walking away, not just from the motel, from everything. Pack a small bag, drive west, never look back. But where would I go? Who would I be? Without the house, without Daniel, I felt erased, like I didn't exist anymore. One afternoon, I tried to visit the church office. Father Matthews looked startled when I walked in. "Mary, maybe you should rest," he said gently. "Daniel told us you've been confused lately." Confused, that word again. My son was telling people I wasn't in my right mind, laying the groundwork, turning community against me. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Back at the motel, I sat by the window watching cars on Route 17. Families headed to dinner, kids laughing in the back seat. Life went on without me. I was just a ghost on the side of the road. No one noticed. No one cared. That night, I realized something chilling. If I disappeared tomorrow, the world would move on. Daniel and Claire would raise a glass celebrating their victory while my name faded into dust. The isolation was complete. No home, no son, no friends willing to stand by me. I was abandoned in plain sight. And yet deep inside the despair, a small ember still glowed. A whisper saying, "This isn't over." But in that moment, all I could feel was the crushing weight of loss. The kind of loss that makes you wonder if you'll ever be whole again. The motel days dragged on, one blurred into another. The cheap clock above the TV ticked too loudly at night. The air smelled of mildew and bleach. It clung to my clothes. I'd sit by the window for hours watching cars hum down Route 17. Families on their way to dinner. Teenagers speeding toward the beach. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone but me. One gray morning, I drove to the laundromat downtown. The motel sheets needed washing, and so did I. Inside, the machines rattled. The air smelled of detergent and loneliness. I folded my clothes slowly, my mind heavy. That's when I saw it. Tucked in the pocket of my old raincoat, a folded envelope. I froze. That coat had been shoved to the back of my closet for months. I pulled the paper free. The envelope was thin edges worn. Inside was a photocopy, a contract, the one Claire had pressed on me to sign. But this one looked different. I sat at the folding table, my heart pounding. The document listed my name at the top, transfer of deed. But halfway down, my signature looked strange. Jagged, shaky, like someone had copied it badly. I remembered that day, the pen in my hand, the pressure from Daniel's stare, Claire's voice in my ear. Had I really signed this, or had they slipped another page beneath? I ran my finger down the margin, small notes scribbled in pencil. Not mine, Claire's handwriting maybe. One line read, "File with probate office, urgent." My stomach turned. They hadn't just wanted the house. They wanted everything. My husband's savings, the life insurance, the company shares, all of it. I shoved the paper back in the envelope, my hands trembling. It felt like holding a live wire. I looked around the laundromat, a mother folding baby clothes, a teenager scrolling her phone. No one cared that I had just uncovered the proof of betrayal. But I cared. For the first time in weeks, a spark lit inside me. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't slipping. Maybe the truth was right here in black and white. That night, I spread the copy across the motel bed. I studied every line, every clause. The dates didn't match up. The witness line was blank. And at the bottom, my name appeared twice. One looked real, the other clumsy, like someone had traced it without practice. I thought back to the night I overheard them whispering. He's almost convinced Claire had said, "Another month, maybe 2. Then we'll have everything signed." They hadn't meant Daniel, they meant me. They had staged the whole thing. They'd used my trust, my grief, my love as weapons. But now I finally had a weapon of my own. I tucked the paper into my Bible, Robert's old Bible. The leather cover cracked with age. It felt safe there, hidden between verses about truth and justice. Every night I reread the contract, searching for flaws. Every morning I whispered, "Robert, help me use this. Help me fight back." Still I was scared. Scared they'd find out I had it. Scared no one would believe me. Daniel had already told the church I was confused. Neighbors avoided me. What if the courts believed him too? What if I lost everything for good? But deep down a voice whispered, "You're not beaten yet." One afternoon I drove past the courthouse. The old brick building stood tall, American flag whipping in the breeze. Lawyers hurried inside, files tucked under their arms. For a moment I imagined myself walking in, handing over the copy, watching their faces fall. But I wasn't ready, not yet. I needed more proof, more strength. The fight was coming. I could feel it. But first, I had to survive the loneliness. At night, the motel walls seemed to close in. I'd hear voices from the next room, arguments, television laughter, life happening all around me. But mine was on pause. Then I'd touch the Bible, feel the crinkle of the hidden paper, and remind myself, this wasn't the end, not yet. The clue had found me by accident. A forgotten coat pocket, a scrap of paper that carried the weight of my future. But I believe things don't happen by accident. Robert used to say truth has a way of rising up, Mary, even if you try to bury it. And now the truth was in my hands. For the first time in months, I slept without tears. The road ahead was long and dangerous, but I wasn't walking in the dark anymore. I had a light, a small one, but enough to guide me forward. The wolves thought they'd shut me out for good. But I was still here, and I was done being silent. Sunday came heavy with clouds. Savannah air clung thick, the kind of damp heat that pressed on your chest. I hadn't been to church in weeks. Shame kept me away, but something pulled me back that morning. I dressed in my plain navy dress, the hem wrinkled, shoes scuffed from motel carpet. Still, I forced myself out the door. The church bell tolled as I arrived. Families filed in, children tugging at their parents' hands. I slid into the back pew, head bowed, hoping no one would notice me. But someone did. "Mary, is that you?" The voice was low, steady, familiar. I looked up. Richard. He was older now, hair silver at the temples, suit, crisp Bible tucked under his arm. Once decades ago, we'd sat together in this very church as teenagers. He'd gone north for law school while I stayed in Savannah, married Robert, and built a life in the old house. Now here he was, a ghost from my past. "Richard," I whispered, my throat tight. "It's been years." After service, he found me by the steps. "You look troubled," he said gently. "Walk with me." We strolled down Bull Street, Spanish moss, swaying above tourists, snapping pictures of the old brick squares. I told him everything. How Daniel and Claire tricked me. How they locked me out. How the town whispered that I'd lost my mind. By the time I finished, tears blurred my eyes. Richard's jaw was set, his voice firm. "Mary, I'm an estate lawyer now, and what you're describing, it sounds like fraud." We sat at a cafe corner, the kind with chipped mugs and strong black coffee. I pulled the folded envelope from my purse. He spread the papers on the table, reading line by line. Customers bustled around us, but for me, the world went quiet. Richard's eyes sharpened. He tapped the signature. "This isn't consistent," he said. "See the pressure marks, someone traced this. Sloppy work, too." My breath caught. "So I'm not crazy." His gaze softened. "No, Mary, you're not crazy. You were set up." Relief washed over me so strong my hands shook. For weeks, I'd carried the weight of doubt, wondering if I was losing myself. But now someone believed me. Not just anyone, a lawyer, an old friend. Richard leaned forward. "Do you want to fight this?" The question hung heavy. Did I? Part of me wanted to curl up, accept defeat, fade quietly into motel shadows. But another part, the part Robert loved, was fierce. "Yes," I said finally, "I want my life back." Richard nodded once. "Then we'll fight." Over the next week, he guided me step by step. We met in his office, a small space above a bookstore downtown. Bookshelves sagged with case law. Frames on the wall held certificates and faded photos. It smelled of paper, old wood, and determination. "This is bigger than just the house," he explained. "They've tried to claim power of attorney." If that sticks, they control everything: your finances, your medical choices, your future. Chills crawled down my arms. They'd take my whole life. Unless we stop them, he said firmly. Richard made copies of the contract. He circled inconsistencies. He noted missing witnesses, incorrect filing dates. Then he pulled out a recorder. Mary, I need your story in your words. Every detail, every conversation you remember. I spoke for hours about Claire's late-night whispers, about Daniel's cold stares, about the night they changed the locks. By the end, my throat ached, but Richard pressed the stop button, his eyes steady. This is good. This is strong. We'll build on it. For the first time in months, I felt power return to my chest. Not much, just a flicker, but enough to stand straighter. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally, a friend. Someone who saw me not as a confused old widow, but as a woman worth fighting for. That night, back in the motel, I laid Richard's card on the nightstand. The embossed letters gleamed, Richard Carter, attorney at law. I whispered a prayer of thanks, not just to God, but to Robert. Maybe he'd sent Richard back to me. Maybe this was the help I'd begged for in the dark. Either way, hope had returned. And with it, a fire I thought was gone forever. The battle wasn't over, it hadn't even begun. But now I wasn't walking into it alone. Richard stood beside me, and together we'd face Daniel and Claire. No more silence, no more shame. The fight for my life was about to begin. Richard didn't waste time. Mary, he said, if we're going to win, we need proof. Not just the suspicious contract, not just my word, but hard evidence. The kind a judge couldn't ignore. So we started digging. First stop, my old neighbors. I was nervous. People had avoided me for weeks, whispers following me down grocery aisles. But Richard walked tall beside me, his leather briefcase in hand. We knocked on Mrs. Henderson's door. Her lace curtains shifted, then she opened cautiously. Mary, she said softly, I thought you moved away. I swallowed hard. They told you that, didn't they? Her eyes darted. Well, Claire said you weren't well. Richard stepped in. Mrs. Henderson, did you ever see Mary sign papers? Anything unusual? The woman hesitated, then nodded slowly. One afternoon, I saw Claire bring papers to the porch. Mary looked upset. She said she didn't understand, but Claire insisted. I heard raised voices. My chest tightened. Finally a witness. Richard scribbled notes. Would you testify if needed? Mrs. Henderson hesitated, then nodded again. Yes, I always thought something was wrong. Next, we went to the bank. The teller recognized me immediately. Mrs. Whitaker, haven't seen you in months. I forced a smile. Yes, things have been complicated. Richard showed his attorney ID. We need statements, all recent activity, especially transfers under Claire's name. The teller tapped the keyboard. Her eyebrows rose. There were large withdrawals, tens of thousands, from an account tied to Mary's estate. She slid the printout across the counter. Richard's eyes flashed. Exactly what we needed. I gripped the paper, rage bubbling in my veins. Claire hadn't wasted time. She was already bleeding me dry. That night, we spread everything on Richard's desk. The forged contract, Mrs. Henderson's statement, the bank records. Piece by piece, a picture formed. Not just greed, but premeditated fraud. Richard leaned back, fingers steepled. We're building a case. Stronger every day, but we need more. So we planted bait. Richard suggested recording conversations. If Claire slips, we'll have her on tape. The idea scared me. I wasn't used to trickery. But then again, they'd tricked me first. The next Sunday, I saw Daniel and Claire at the market. My heart pounded. But I approached anyway. Daniel, I said softly, please can we talk? His jaw tightened. Claire stepped forward. You should be resting, Mary. You don't belong here. I clicked the recorder in my purse. Claire, why did you forge my signature? Her face drained of color. Careful what you say, she hissed. Daniel glanced around nervously. Not here. Not in public. I walked away, knees trembling. Richard later listened, nodding slowly. Not a confession, but it shows pressure. It shows fear. The plan grew bigger. We searched property filings at the county courthouse. Sure enough, Claire had rushed to record the deed. But the paperwork was sloppy. Wrong dates. A missing witness signature. Richard smiled grimly. They rushed too fast. This could void everything. Every night I sat in the motel, papers spread like a battlefield map. I traced every line, every date. Anger fueled me now. No more tears, no more begging. This was war. Still doubt crept in. What if Daniel lied in court? What if people believed him over me? One evening, I broke down in Richard's office. "He's my son," I whispered. "My only child. What if I can't face him?" Richard's voice was steady. "Mary, you're not fighting Daniel. You're fighting the lies around him. Deep down, he's still your boy. But right now, he's lost." I wiped my eyes, clutching the Bible in my lap. He was right. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about truth. Weeks passed, evidence piled higher. A neighbor's affidavit, a bank manager's statement, even a voicemail Claire left Daniel pressuring him to speed things up. Every piece was a dagger, every page a step closer to justice. By the end of October, Richard stacked everything neatly. "We're ready," he said. "Time to file." I stared at the mountain of papers, proof of betrayal, proof of greed, but also proof that I wasn't crazy, that my voice still mattered. My heart pounded. For the first time in months, I felt strong. The wolves thought they had buried me, but I was still standing. And soon the whole town would know the truth. The courthouse loomed tall, red brick, white columns, American flags snapping in the wind. My heart thudded in my chest. Every step up those stone stairs felt like walking into battle. Richard walked beside me, steady, calm, a briefcase swinging at his side. "You ready?" he asked. I swallowed hard, as ready as I'll ever be. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and polished floors. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Neighbors, church friends, people who'd avoided me for weeks now sat in the back rows waiting for a show. At the front, Daniel and Claire sat side by side. Daniel in a navy suit, face pale eyes fixed on the table. Claire wore pearls hair pinned perfect smile, sharp as a blade. She glanced at me, and for a second her lips curled smug. The judge entered. All rise. We stood. My knees shook. I gripped the wooden bench, whispering a prayer. When we sat again, Richard rose first. "Your Honor, we're here today to challenge the validity of documents fraudulently executed against my client, Mary Whitaker." His voice was firm, every syllable clear. I sat straighter, grateful he was my shield. Claire's lawyer stood next, a slick man in a gray suit. He spoke smoothly. "Your Honor, this is a family matter. Mrs. Whitaker's son and daughter-in-law were simply caring for her as her health declined. She willingly signed over her property for her own protection." Gasps murmured through the room. Heat rose in my chest. Protection. They had thrown me onto the street. I clenched my fists under the table. Richard began presenting evidence. One by one, he laid documents on the stand. The forged deed, the bank withdrawals, Mrs. Henderson's statement. Each piece struck like thunder. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows drawn. Then Richard pulled the final card, a small USB drive. "Your Honor, we have an audio recording. My client confronted Claire in public. Listen carefully." The courtroom hushed. The recording crackled through speakers. My voice shaky but firm. "Claire, why did you forge my signature?" Then Claire's hiss. "Careful what you say." The words hung in the air, sharp, damning. Claire's lawyer shot up. "Objection taken out of context." But the damage was done. The gallery whispered. Even Daniel's head dropped lower. Richard wasn't finished. "Your Honor, we also obtained courthouse filings. Note the dates. The notary line left blank. The witness signature missing." He slid the papers forward. "These aren't just irregularities. They're violations of state law. This deed is invalid." The judge's brow furrowed. He scribbled notes. Then came the twist. Richard called a surprise witness. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Thomas Green, bank manager at Savannah First." My breath caught. I hadn't known about this. Mr. Green took the stand, testifying to Claire's withdrawals. Tens of thousands, he said, all moved into her personal account, withdrawn in cash. Claire stiffened. Her lawyer stammered. The gallery gasped again. Finally, the judge turned to Daniel. "Mr. Whitaker, did you knowingly participate in this fraud?" Daniel's face drained of color. His lips trembled. He looked at me just once. His mother, the woman who raised him. Tears welled in his eyes. I didn't know everything. I thought Claire was helping. But I see now, I was wrong. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, Mom. My chest twisted. Years of love, years of betrayal, all in one broken apology. The judge's gavel struck. This court finds the deed invalid. The property shall be restored to its rightful owner, Mary Whitaker. Further, this case will be referred for criminal investigation. The room erupted. Whispers, shock. Claire's face went pale. The pearls at her neck suddenly looked like chains. Her lawyer leaned close, but she shoved him away, eyes burning. I sat frozen. It was over. The house was mine again. But the victory felt heavy, like lifting a stone off my chest only to see the bruise beneath. Daniel wept quietly, head in his hands. Neighbors watched me, some ashamed, some curious. But I didn't care anymore. The truth was out. Justice had spoken. Richard squeezed my hand. You did it, Mary. No, I thought. We did it. For the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs again. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I was standing tall. The wolves had circled, but I had fought back. And I had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters lingered. Flashes popped. Questions flew. Mrs. Whitaker, how do you feel? I paused, looking at the sky. Savannah's sun broke through clouds, warm on my face. I answered simply, truth always wins, even when it takes everything to get there. The courthouse steps were crowded. Reporters swarmed. Neighbors lingered, hungry for gossip. But the spotlight wasn't on me. It was on Claire. She stormed past the cameras, her pearls rattling, her smile gone. For the first time, she didn't look polished. She looked cornered. The sheriff's deputies closed in. Ma'am, you'll need to come with us. Claire's voice cracked. This is ridiculous. I was protecting her. But no one believed her anymore. Not after the evidence, not after the recording, not after the bank manager's testimony. Her words bounced off brick walls, falling flat. Daniel trailed behind his shoulders, slumped his face pale. No longer her shield, no longer her soldier. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching it unfold. For weeks I dreamed of this moment, of seeing her lies unravel, of seeing her stripped of the power she stole. But standing there, I felt something different. Not triumph, not revenge, just sorrow. Because when families break, no one really wins. Claire's trial moved fast. Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation. The charges piled high. Her lawyer fought hard, but the evidence was crushing. Neighbors testified. Bank records screamed the truth. And the audio recording echoed through the courtroom again and again. In the end, the jury didn't take long. Guilty. Claire's sentence came down hard. Prison time, restitution. The woman who once sat smug in my kitchen now wore shackles on her wrists. Her pearl necklace was gone. Her tailored dresses replaced with orange. The fall was complete. Daniel came to see me after. He stood on my porch like a boy again. His eyes were red, his hands shaking. Mom, he whispered, I don't know how to live with myself. I said nothing. The silence stretched. Finally, he dropped to his knees. I'm sorry. I was blind. I let her control me. I hurt you. His tears hit the porch steps, darkening the wood. I wanted to reach out, to pull him close, to tell him it was all right. But the wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I folded my arms, my voice low. You turned your back on me, Daniel, when I needed you most. He sobbed harder. I know, Mom, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Neighbors slowly returned. The whispers shifted. Mary was right all along. Poor thing what she went through. Some brought pies, some brought flowers. But no gift could erase the months I'd spent alone in that motel believing I was losing my mind. Still, their faces softened with shame, and I let them back in, because holding bitterness would only poison me. The old Victorian house felt different now. The locks were mine again. The rooms echoed with silence. I dusted Robert's portrait, set it back in its rightful place. See, I whispered, I didn't let them take it. I swore I saw his eyes shine brighter in the lamplight. Claire faded from town, her name spoken only in hushed tones, her story a cautionary tale. Daniel, though, lingered. He came often, mowing the lawn, fixing the porch steps. Trying, always trying. Some nights we sat together in silence. He'd glance at me, waiting for forgiveness. I wasn't ready yet, but I didn't turn him away. Richard checked in too, papers signed, case closed. Justice was served, he said, but it came at a cost. I nodded. The cost was trust. The cost was family. Still as I walked through the house one evening sunset, painting the walls gold, I felt something stir. Not victory, not peace, but strength. Because I had survived. Because I had fought back. Because I was still standing. Claire had fallen, Daniel had broken. But I was whole again. Scarred, yes, but whole. The house was mine again. But it felt different now. The walls no longer whispered of betrayal. They whispered of survival. Every creak in the floorboards, every sway of the porch swing reminded me I had fought back. And I had won. Claire was gone. Her name turned into courthouse records, her face hidden behind prison walls. Justice had taken her freedom, and with it, the mask she had worn for so long. I heard once from an old neighbor that she cried in her cell, that she begged for forgiveness from no one who cared to listen. For me, that was enough. She was paying her price. Daniel still came by, week after week knocking softly on my door. He mowed the grass. He painted the shutters. He fixed the old fence. Not because I asked, because he needed to. One evening he sat on the porch steps, hands rough, eyes tired. "Mom," he said quietly, "thank you for letting me try. I don't deserve it, but I'll spend my life earning it." I didn't answer right away. The sunset stretched across the yard, orange melting into pink. Finally, I laid a hand on his shoulder. "You're my son, Daniel. That will never change. But trust takes time." He nodded, tears shining, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy I raised, not the man who betrayed me. Richard visited too. He never stayed long. Just a check-in, a warm smile, a reminder that friendship lasts. "Mary," he said, "one day you showed them. You showed everyone." I smiled, pouring him coffee. "No, Richard, we showed them. Together." Life slowly returned to rhythm. Church on Sundays. Biscuits and gravy in the mornings. Neighbors dropping by with pies and stories again. The whispers of pity were gone, replaced with respect. When I walked through the market, heads nodded. People smiled. They knew the truth now. And the truth had set me free. One afternoon, I stood at the window watching the oak trees sway. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Peace not because the storm was gone, but because I had walked through it and still stood tall. Robert would have been proud. I could almost hear his voice, steady and kind. "You kept the heart of us, Mary. You never let them take it." I closed my eyes, tears soft on my cheeks. Yes, the house was still ours, and so was my spirit. What had I learned? That family can cut deepest. That love can blind. That trust once broken is hard to rebuild. But also this truth doesn't die. It waits, it rises, it wins. Always. Claire paid the price. Daniel carried his regret, and me, I carried wisdom. A scar, yes, but also strength. Because sometimes the very thing meant to destroy you is what makes you unbreakable. So now I ask you, the one listening to my story, if betrayal came to your door, would you have the strength to fight? Would you stand even if the whole world doubted you? Because one day truth may ask you the same. The porch swing creaked softly, evening air warm on my face. I held my Bible in my lap, the same one that had hidden the clue, the proof that saved me. And I whispered one last prayer. Thank you for justice, for mercy, for letting me see the sunrise again. The fight was over, the storm had passed, and I was still standing, whole, strong, free. CTA, closing message. Family betrayal cuts the deepest, but truth will always rise no matter how long it takes. Sometimes justice doesn't just punish the guilty, it gives the broken a second chance. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more family stories that remind us all the truth always finds the light.